Okay, so what is bipolar disorder? Obviously, I refer to it a lot in my blog or on my website simply because I personally have bipolar disorder. To be more specific, I have bipolar 2 disorder. The difference between bipolar 1 and bipolar 2 is that bipolar 1 people will experience high manic states and less severe depressive states. And then someone with bipolar 2 is going to experience what's called hypomanic states, which are less severe than manic states, and very low depressive states. And they typically spend most of the time in depression. So again, you can kind of contrast mania and hypomania being, mania is rapid speech, thinking they're God's gift to the world, like just high-end feelings of awesomeness, if you will. Whereas hypomania is feeling good, taken up a few notches kind of thing. So that's the difference between bipolar 1 and bipolar 2 disorder. It's also called manic depressive disorder, not so much anymore, but that's what it was called. It can also be called bipolar affective disorder. It is a mood disorder, basically meaning the problem lies not in your personality, like a personality disorder would, but more in your mood or your emotional state. Typically, it has an onset between ages 15 to 25. Females tend to have a later onset than males, and that's pretty much across the board for most disorders. Like schizophrenia, females will be diagnosed a little later, whereas males will be diagnosed earlier. I kind of like to relate bipolar and its mood swings to a heart rhythm. Basically, you go up, down, really high up, really low down. You get a little bit of normal in the middle, then you're back on the roller coaster again. That's basically what it is. Speaking from a personal perspective, my bipolar really reared its head when I was about 13 or 14. Then my depression blew up, you know. It was noticeable. You know, I started self-harming, I was antisocial from the get-go, loss of interest in hobbies. The self-harming was obviously the biggest. There's a problem here, sign or flag or whatever. Yeah, so my depression hit when I was 13 or 14. Started self-harming. I self-harmed until I was 19. And it wasn't until last year, so when I was 24, I was finally diagnosed with something. And that something is bipolar 2 disorder, OCD, and ADHD. So yeah, that's a summation of bipolar disorder in general. For me, bipolar is really, it's really tiresome. It's exhausting. You know, your irritability is the worst one, I think, before I was on medication to control it, but I was extremely irritable, like, walk on eggshells around me, irritable. I had a lot of rage, very angry person. I remember just constantly being beside myself. No words to describe it, just unbelievably frustrated. It's, you know, it's just simply terribly uncomfortable. You know, and even being on medication now, I can still feel it. Medication doesn't fix it, right? You can't fix bipolar, it's a lifelong thing. It is. It's part of who you are. It's a mood disorder, right? And it doesn't go away. Medications can tame it to a degree, But like I said, I can still feel irritability at times, anxiety at times. Anxiety was huge for me before medications came along. I couldn't even take my dogs to the dog park just because I was petrified. I remember I couldn't take Finn for a walk on the street because I thought he was going to get hit by a car. Yeah, I had anxiety about pretty much everything, and that's taxing on a person. It keeps you from doing a lot of different things. Social anxiety was another big one. That's probably why I haven't... No, I'll rephrase. That is exactly why I haven't made many friends or kind of pushed myself out there, is I have social anxiety. Again, now with medication, that is curbed quite a bit, but it still exists within me. I'm still trying to break habits too, right? Like, you know, if I have easily 10 years, more than 10 years of habits that I have to now break. You know, I was, over 10 years, I was, for instance, scared of going to the dog park. Now I have, you know, I have to break that routine, to break that mind habit, and kind of just push myself forward. But yeah, being diagnosed with bipolar disorder was probably the best thing that ever happened to me, because before I was diagnosed, I just thought I was crazy. I knew there was something wrong with me. I always knew there was something wrong with me. But being able to call it something and look it up online or talk to people about it and say, this is what I have, how much of me is the disorder and how much of me is me? You know, and that's a really hard thing to figure out. You know, what is my personality and what is the sleeping dragon, if you will? You know, so that's a really tough thing to figure out, and it takes a lot of time to figure it out, and I can still say, ever since, I've been on medication now for 7 months, and I'm just starting to have hobbies, I'm just starting to have interests. So 7 months of just doing nothing, and not having to fight with myself. Do you know how much time that frees up? Frees up a lot of time. So all of a sudden you find yourself just doing random things to, you know, keep the boredom away. And then they kind of turn into hobbies. And then eventually you have what are called interests, which is something I've never had before. You know, so I think, what was I talking about? Diagnosis. The diagnosis itself was a tremendous help, because it put me in a box. Some people wouldn't, you know, they don't want to be put in a box. I said, hell yeah, give me a name for it, because I know I'm crazy. What's going on? Now, before you get all uptight, I don't mean that bipolar people or people with mental illnesses are crazy. I'm just saying that's how you feel. You feel insane. Like, it's not even funny. You feel actually insane. Then once somebody gave me the name for it, I felt less insane, because I had a place. I belonged somewhere. I could look it up and be like, oh, social anxiety is part of it. I'm not just a mutant, you know? I'm not just some strange individual who doesn't like social interaction. I have what's called social anxiety, you know? So I think that helped me a lot to be able to call it something. But yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I was 13 when the depression hit. I went through some self-harm. I can probably do a blog on that later. But I just really want to talk about bipolar itself. It's just, it's irritability, it's anxiety, it's high highs, low lows. On your highs, you can get a lot done. You typically don't finish projects, but you start a whole lot of them, and you think they're the best thing ever. What else? You have increased self-esteem when you're high. You are chatty, very chatty. You have a lot to say, and you're probably jumping topic to topic because you have so much to say. in addition to that, you're already 4 conversations ahead than what everybody else is. So, yeah. Your lows are basic depression. I think people are more familiar with what depression feels like. You know, suicidal thoughts, low self-worth, no interest in anything. Life it just sucks. The whole thing just sucks. You know, so anyway, they don't really know what causes bipolar. You're more likely to have it if a relative has it, so there is a genetic link to it. But overall, they can't point to something and say, boom, that's the trauma that causes bipolar disorder. All they have right now is a genetic understanding of it. In terms of curing bipolar, you can't cure bipolar. It's not fixable. It's treatable and manageable, but it's not. You don't cure bipolar. So yeah, I think that's all I have to say right now about that. I'll probably have something else to say, and I will just do another vid blog about it, and keep you up to date on my thoughts. Alright, wicked. Thank you for watching.